Papa, if you cannot pay, come down. We are not running a charity bus.
The old man froze beside the door as passengers stared. His hand went into his pocket again. Nothing, no wallet, no cash. Dare Adebayo saw the shame on his face. Then the young conductor did something that could cost him more than money. He pulled out the cash he had kept for his own lunch, dropped it into the fare pouch and said, "Your fare is paid, sir. Please sit down." The bus went silent. Dare had no idea the elderly man he had just defended was Bode Balogun, the father of one of Nigeria's wealthiest businessmen. But that small act of kindness would soon drag Dare into a fight over missing deductions, unsafe buses, and a supervisor powerful enough to take away his livelihood. And when Dare was finally forced to choose between keeping his job and protecting innocent passengers, everything exploded. So don't leave this story halfway. Before we continue, tell us in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. And if you believe dignity should never depend on how much money someone has, subscribe and stay with us. Because Dare's biggest reward would not be money. It would be the truth. The bus jerked forward into the late morning traffic of Lagos mainland. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. Then the noise returned in layers. A woman at the back continued arguing on her phone. Two schoolboys in faded uniforms started laughing over something on one of their screens. A man by the window tapped the metal frame impatiently, each time traffic slowed. Outside, horns answered horns. Yellow buses squeezed into impossible spaces. A dispatch rider cut across the lane and disappeared between two cars, as if he had been born without fear. Dare moved down the aisle, counting passengers again. He was 31, lean from long days on his feet, and wore a light sky blue shirt under a burnt orange reflective vest that had seen too many wash cycles. The vest was meant to make him visible near moving vehicles. Most days, it only made him easier to find when somebody wanted to complain. "Change, conductor," a woman called. "I'm coming, madam." "Since when?" "Since you asked me 10 seconds ago." A few passengers laughed. Dare grinned, reached into his fare pouch and handed her the balance. That was Dare. His mouth had a mind of its own. He could be respectful, he usually was, but he had never learned the special skill some workers possessed. The one that allowed them to swallow an insult whole and pretend it had no taste. He glanced toward the old man. Bode Balogun sat by the window, both hands resting on a slim pharmacy bag. He wore a simple cream-colored kaftan and a brown cap. Nothing about him announced wealth. His leather sandals were clean but old. His wristwatch was modest. He looked like what he was, an elderly Nigerian man who had left his house to run an errand, and somehow ended up unable to pay for a bus ride. His face was still tight with embarrassment. Dare knew that look. He had worn it himself at 19 when a shopkeeper loudly returned the bread he had picked because he was 20 naira short. The money had been nothing. The laughter had been everything. So he did not keep looking at Bode. That was part of helping somebody too. You did not need to turn your kindness into another kind of staring. By the time the bus approached the next major stop, Bode raised one hand. "Young man," Dare leaned closer. "Yes, sir? What is your name?" Dare what, Adebayo?" Bode nodded slowly, as if filing it somewhere. "I will return your money." Dare almost laughed. "Papa, it's fair. Not mortgage. I said I will return it." The old man's voice was quiet, but there was something in it that made Dare stop joking. "Okay, sir. Thank you." Dare shrugged. "No problem." Bode looked at him for another second. "It was a problem," he said. "You just refused to make it one." Then he turned back to the window. That line followed Dare longer than he expected. At the terminal, the bus emptied into heat, exhaust, and restless movement. Dare helped an elderly woman step down, counted the remaining cash again, and followed the driver toward the depot office. The depot was a low concrete building, squeezed behind rows of buses. Its walls had once been painted white. Now they carried years of dust, handprints, and rain stains. A mechanic lay half beneath one bus with only his boots showing. Two drivers argued over who had taken a vehicle without signing it out. Somewhere behind the office, a radio played High Life through a speaker that distorted every bass note. Dare had worked there for 3 years. Long enough to know which bus had a stubborn door. Long enough to know which driver could reverse into a space no wider than a prayer. Long enough to know which supervisors smiled only when somebody else was in trouble. Kohler Johnson stood beside the dispatch desk. He was in his mid-40s, broad-shouldered, always freshly shaved, and wearing the deep emerald green polo shirt he preferred for work. The company logo sat over his chest. A pen was clipped neatly at the collar. Kohler believed appearance mattered. He also believed fear worked better than conversation. There it was. Not hello, not how was the route. Just his name, stretched like the beginning of a charge sheet. Dare approached. Yes, sir. Kohler tapped the remittance sheet with one finger. I heard you delayed the bus over one passenger. Dare looked at the driver, who suddenly became deeply interested in the cracked screen of his phone. An old man forgot his wallet. That was not my question. We were delayed maybe 1 minute. Maybe? Less than the traffic at the next junction. Kohler's eyes narrowed. I also heard you paid his fare. Yes, with whose money? Mine. Then next week you will pay for 5 people. Next month 10. Soon every passenger with a sad face will enter free. Dare exhaled through his nose. He did not enter free. I paid. If you want to open charity, do it after working hours. Dare felt heat rise behind his ears. It wasn't charity, sir. Kohler folded his arms. No, the man had no wallet. People were already talking to him like he was rubbish. I paid so we could move. Business is business, and respect is respect. The driver shut his eyes briefly. That was the problem with Dare's mouth. Sometimes it spoke before his rent remembered itself. Kohler stared at him. You think because you collect fares, you understand how transport business works. No, sir. You think passengers will respect a company that has no rules. No, sir. Then what exactly are you arguing? Dare looked toward the yard. A younger conductor named Lecken stood near the accounts window, holding a paper with both hands. His shoulders were slumped. Dare had seen that paper before. Shortage notice. I'm saying rules should not make us stupid. Kohler's jaw hardened. Careful. Dare nodded. Yes, sir. Kohler pointed at the remittance desk. Submit your cash. Dare did. He counted the money twice with Bissy Williams, the dispatch and accounts clerk, watching. Bissy was 38 and never wasted words. She wore a plum-colored blouse that day and had the expression of somebody who had spent the morning separating numbers from excuses. Amount? She asked. Dare gave it. She counted. Matched. She stamped his sheet. As he turned away, he heard Lecken speaking softly to Kohler. Sir, I don't understand this deduction. You were short. By how much? It is written there, but I submitted everything. Then prove it. I asked for the breakdown. Kohler stepped closer. You are asking too many questions for somebody who needs next week's shifts. Lecken went quiet. Dare stopped walking. Bissy looked up at him. Do not. She did not say the words, but her face did. Dare kept walking, barely. That evening, he reached his rented room in a compound where 4 tenants shared an outside tap, and the generator only came alive when everybody agreed to contribute money. His mother did not live with him, but he called her every night. How was work? She asked. Normal good, or normal bad? Normal Nigerian. She laughed. Dare smiled and sat on the edge of his bed. On the small table beside him lay a folded brochure from a transport operations evening course. He had picked it up 2 weeks earlier. The course would not transform his life overnight. It would not make him a manager, but it could help him move from collecting fares to something more stable. Dispatch, scheduling, fleet operations, maybe eventually supervision done by somebody who did not enjoy watching people shrink. He had been saving for the first payment. Slowly, painfully. That day's lunch money had been part of the plan, too. His stomach reminded him. He had eaten 1 meat pie at 4 in the afternoon and pretended it was lunch. Have you paid for that course? His mother asked. Not yet. Dare, I will. Do not keep waiting until life becomes convenient. Life does not become convenient. He smiled again. Yes, Mummy. After the call, he opened a cheap exercise book. Most conductors kept fares in memory until remittance. Dare wrote his down. Route, bus number, trips, cash submitted, any issue. He had started the habit after being charged for a shortage 6 months earlier. He had known the figures were wrong. Kohler had insisted they were right. Dare had paid because the alternative was losing 3 shifts. That night, he added another note beneath the day's numbers. Elderly passenger. Forgot wallet. Fare paid personally. No shortage. Then, after thinking for a moment, he wrote, Lecken disputed deduction. Asked for breakdown. None given in front of me. He stared at the sentence. It looked like nothing. Just words in a cheap notebook. But cheap things have a strange habit of becoming expensive when somebody powerful wants them gone. Dare did not know that yet. The next morning, Bode Balogun returned to the depot. Dare saw him while standing beside a bus, arguing with a passenger about change. Sir, I gave you your balance. You did not. I did. You gave me 100 short. Dare pointed at the man's hand. Please open your palm. The passenger did. The missing note was folded beneath another. People nearby laughed. The passenger grunted and walked off without apology. Bode waited until Dare turned. Young man. Dare blinked. Papa? Bode held out the exact fare from the previous day. Dare stared at it. You came back because of this? I told you I would. Sir, you could have kept it. And why would I keep your money? It's small. Bode's face changed. Not anger, something sharper. Small to whom? Dare said nothing. Bode placed the cash in his palm. Money being small does not mean the person who spent it did not need it. Dare looked down at the note. The old man was right. Worse, he was right in a way that removed the warm little story Dare had told himself about being generous. A person could receive kindness without turning the giver's sacrifice into decoration. Thank you, sir, Dare said. Bode nodded. That is better. Before he could leave, shouting broke out by the office. Lecken again, Kohler again. This time, several conductors were watching. You will sign the deduction, Kohler said. I am only asking for the figures, sir. You think I have time to explain every 100 naira to you? It is more than 100. Kohler stepped closer. You people steal from the company every day, then come here acting like accountants. Lecken's face changed. The humiliation was worse because of the audience. Dare felt his body turn before his mind agreed. Bode noticed. Is that your supervisor? He asked. Dare gave a short laugh. Unfortunately, Bode watched Kohler for a moment. Does he always speak to workers like that? On a good day, less. Bode glanced at him. Dare expected another lecture. It did not come. Instead, Bode said, people reveal themselves very quickly when they believe the person in front of them cannot answer back. Then he walked away. Dare watched him go. He had no idea where the man lived. No idea who his family was. No idea that in a glass-walled office across the city, Bode's son was at that moment discussing the purchase of another fleet of heavy-duty vehicles for a logistics company whose annual revenue could have swallowed Dare's depot whole. Dare only knew one thing. The old man had returned a small fare because he respected what it had cost. That mattered. 2 days later, Dare began writing more. Not because Bode had inspired him. Not because he thought he was building a case. Because Kohler cut one of his better shifts. Then another. And when Dare asked why, Kohler smiled. Operational needs, nothing more. Dare knew what that meant. Keep talking and you will learn how expensive your voice can be. He wrote the lost shifts into the notebook too. The notebook became a quiet habit. Date, bus number, cash handed over, any deduction, any complaint. Sometimes nothing happened for days. Those were the easy pages. Then came a Monday when almost every page had something on it. The morning started with rain. Not the gentle kind. The kind that made Lagos roads look like somebody had poured grey paint over them. Water sat in potholes. Drivers leaned harder on their horns. People squeezed beneath shop awnings and cursed every vehicle that splashed them. Dare was assigned to bus 17 with a driver named Tayo. Tayo was one of the few men at the depot who could argue without raising his voice. That morning, even he looked irritated. The brake is not feeling right, he said before they pulled out. Dare looked at him. What do you mean? It is responding, but not cleanly. Too much travel before it catches. Did you report? I told Musa in maintenance. What did he say? He will check when we return. Dare frowned. Why not now? Tayo lifted both hands. Ask management. Dare went straight to Kola. Sir, Tayo says bus 17 has a brake issue. Kola did not look up from his phone. Mechanic said it can run. Did mechanic check it? Are you a mechanic? No, then stop behaving like one. That is why I'm asking for a mechanic. Kola raised his eyes slowly. You like problems? Dare looked toward the yard. Passengers were already gathering. What if the problem becomes bigger on the road? What if rain stops falling in 5 minutes? What if fuel becomes free tomorrow? We can do what if all day. Tayo is the driver, and I am the supervisor. The sentence landed exactly where Kola wanted it to. Hierarchy. Not answer. Dare went back to Tayo. What did he say? Tayo asked. Dare looked at him. You already know. Tayo rubbed his jaw. We take one trip. If it worsens, we stop. Dare did not like it. But he got on. That detail would bother him later, because courage is easier to admire from the future. In the moment, rent exists, food exists. A supervisor can cut your shifts. Your mother can call and ask whether you have paid for the course you keep postponing. So Dare got on the bus. And for most of the route, nothing happened. That was the dangerous part. Nothing. The brake responded. Passengers got off. Others got on. Rain thinned. Traffic thickened. Dare almost began to feel foolish. Then a Danfo cut across them near an intersection. Tayo hit the brake. The pedal sank lower than he expected. The bus stopped. But late. Too late for comfort. Everybody lurched forward. A woman screamed. A man's plastic bags split and oranges rolled beneath the seats. The bus missed the Danfo by less than a meter. For a moment, even Lagos became quiet inside that bus. Then passengers exploded. Driver, are you mad? You want to kill us? Why are you speeding? Tayo turned halfway in his seat. I was not speeding, Dare saw his face. That was enough. Everybody calm down, Dare said. We are stopping. What do you mean stopping? A passenger demanded. We need this bus checked. I have an appointment. And I have a life, somebody else shouted. Tayo pulled to a safer position. Dare called the depot. Kola answered. What? Bus 17 nearly failed to stop. Nearly? Yes, so it stopped. Dare stared through the wet windscreen. Kola, listen to yourself. There was a pause. Then Kola's voice dropped. Bring the bus back. We are not carrying passengers back in it. Did I ask your opinion? We are not carrying them. Dare, no, sir. Tayo looked at him. Dare knew he had crossed a line. The strange thing was, he felt calmer after crossing it. He arranged for passengers to transfer to another company vehicle that was following the same route. It took time. People complained. A few thanked him. Most simply wanted to continue their day. That was also reality. Nobody applauded. Nobody filmed him like a hero. A woman muttered that she would be late because of him. A man demanded half his fare back. Dare refunded him. When the replacement bus finally left, Dare and Tayo returned slowly to the depot with bus 17 empty. Kola was waiting. He did not shout. That was worse. Office. Dare followed him inside. The room smelled of damp paper and strong aftershave. Kola shut the door. You refused a direct instruction. I stopped an unsafe bus. You are not qualified to declare a bus unsafe. The driver reported a brake concern before we left. Tayo said it could run. Tayo said he reported it. Answer me. Did the brake fail? Dare hesitated. No. Did you crash? No. Did anybody get injured? No. So you disrupted a route, transferred passengers, refunded company money and returned a revenue vehicle because you felt afraid. Dare stared at him. That is not what happened. That is exactly what happened. You are changing it. I am documenting it. Kola pushed a form across the desk. Sign. Dare read it. Operational misconduct. Failure to follow supervisor instruction. Unapproved fare refund. Revenue disruption. The paper did not mention the prior brake complaint. Dare looked up. Add the brake report. Kola laughed once. You want to edit disciplinary form now. It is missing what caused the whole thing. Sign no. Kola leaned back. You think that old man you helped is coming to save you? Dare blinked. What old man? The one you turned into a drama last week. Maybe you think every passenger is your father. Dare's face hardened. This has nothing to do with him. Everything has to do with your attitude. You think rules bend because you feel morally superior. Dare pushed the form back. I will sign when it says what happened. Cola's smile disappeared. Go home. Dare did not move. Go home, Dare. For today? Until I call you. The words were soft. They struck hard. Dare stepped outside. Bissy was at the accounts desk. She looked at his face and knew. What happened? Suspended for stopping the bus. For having an attitude. Bissy pressed her lips together. Did you sign anything? No, good. Dare looked at her. That sounded like advice. It was not. Of course. She glanced toward Cola's office, then lowered her voice. Keep your own records. Dare's expression changed. What do you mean? I mean exactly what I said. Bissy. She looked at him directly. Do not make me say something I cannot afford to defend. Dare understood. He nodded. Okay. At home that afternoon, he placed his orange vest on the back of a chair. The room looked strange without work waiting for him. He called Tayo. Did they check the bus? Yes. And? Mechanic changed something in the brake system. What exactly? I don't know. I'm not there now. Did they write it? Should be in the maintenance book. Will you say you reported the problem before the trip? Silence. Dare sat still. Tayo? I told Musa. I'm asking if you will say it. Another silence. I have a wife, Tayo said. Dare closed his eyes. I know. 2 children. I know, and Cola controls my shifts too. Dare swallowed. I know, Tayo exhaled. If they ask me directly, I will not lie. That was not courage, but it was not cowardice either. It was the narrow strip most people walked when they had bills waiting at home. Thank you, Dare said. He ended the call. Then he opened his notebook. He wrote down everything. The report before departure, the near miss, the transfer, the refund, the form. Cola's refusal to add the brake complaint. He wrote until his hand cramped. 3 days passed, no call. On the 4th day, Dare returned to the depot on his own. Cola handed him a letter. Termination. He read it twice. It was not dramatic. That was the cruelest part. No shouting, no crowd. A piece of paper with his name, a date, and words that meant the room he rented had just become more expensive. You are serious? Dare asked. Cola remained behind his desk. Very. Because I stopped that bus? Because of repeated insubordination, operational disruption, and failure to follow procedure. What procedure? Your attitude is proving my point. Dare laughed. Not because anything was funny. Show me the written procedure for those deductions you keep making. Cola's face changed slightly. There. A small movement. Dare saw it, you see, Cola said. This is why you cannot work under authority. No. This is why you don't like questions. Cola stood. You are no longer an employee here. Leave. Dare picked up the termination letter. He wanted to tear it. He did not. He folded it carefully and put it inside his notebook. That small act irritated Cola more than shouting would have. Dare walked out. Likan saw him near the gate. Brother. Dare stopped. Likan looked at the folded paper in his hand. They fired you? Yes. For that bus? For many things, apparently. Likan looked back toward the office. Then at Dare again. I'm sorry. Dare nodded. Just keep your own figures. Likan's face tightened. You think I should fight them? Dare almost said yes. Then he remembered Tayo's children. He remembered his own rent. He shook his head. No. Likan looked surprised. Keep your figures, Dare repeated. That is all. He went home. For the first week, pride carried him. Pride is useful that way. It can make hunger feel temporary. He applied for jobs at 2 other transport companies, 1 dispatch warehouse and a small courier service. At every place, they asked why he had left his previous employer. Operational disagreement, he said. One interviewer raised an eyebrow. What kind? I stopped a bus because of a safety concern. And your employer fired you? Yes. The man looked at his CV again. We will call you. They did not. By the 2nd week, Dare sold the small Bluetooth speaker he used in his room. By the 3rd, he delayed sending money to his mother. She noticed. Of course she noticed. You did not send anything this week, she said on the phone. I had expenses. Are you still working? Dare stared at the wall. There were moments in adult life when lying to your mother felt more childish than telling the truth. I lost the job. Silence. When? 3 weeks ago. Dare, I didn't want you to worry. You think not knowing protects me. He had no answer. What happened? He told her. Not everything, enough. When he finished, she did not praise him. That surprised him. You did the right thing stopping the bus, she said. But right things also need wisdom. Keep your papers. Keep dates. Do not turn anger into evidence. Dare sat up straighter. What? Anger is not evidence, he smiled despite himself. You sound like Bissy. Who is Bissy? Somebody who refuses to say anything useful directly. His mother laughed once. Then her voice softened. Do not let this make you bitter. Dare looked at the folded course brochure on his table. The deadline had passed. I'm trying. That same week, Bode Balogun boarded the route again. He noticed Dare was missing before the bus left the first stop. The new conductor was polite enough, but Bode kept looking toward the door whenever somebody climbed in. At the depot, he did something he normally disliked doing. He asked questions. Where is Dare Adebayo? The young conductor shrugged. No longer here, sir. Transferred? Fired. Bode's face tightened. Why? The young man looked toward the office. I don't know, sir. That meant he knew something. Bode understood schools, staff rooms, administrators. Fear had the same accent in many workplaces. He found Bissy at the accounts window. Good afternoon, sir. I'm looking for Dare. Bissy paused. You are the elderly passenger? Bode's eyebrow rose. So people discussed me. Bissy almost smiled. Small depot. What happened to him? He was dismissed. Why? Bissy looked toward Cola's office, then back at Bode. There was a disagreement over a bus. What kind of disagreement? Safety. And he was dismissed for that. I did not say that. You also did not say no. Bissy's mouth tightened. You ask questions like a teacher. I was one. That made her look at him again. Retired principal. Bissy gave a quiet sound of understanding. Then you know people can lose work because the wrong person dislikes the right question. Bode heard the sentence clearly. He did not push further. Do you have Dare's number? I cannot give out staff information. Former staff. Still cannot. Bode nodded. Good, he respected that answer. Can you give him mine? He took a small card from his pocket. Bissy looked at the name. Bode Balogun, no company, just a phone number. She took it. I can pass it if I see him. Thank you. He turned to leave. Cola stepped out of his office. For 1 second their eyes met. Cola recognized him. The charity passenger, he said lightly. Bode stopped. Bissy looked down at her desk. Bode turned back. I beg your pardon? Cola smiled. Nothing, sir. Just a joke. Bode studied him. There was no anger in the old man's face. That made Cola slightly uncomfortable. A joke is usually better when the other person laughs, Bode said. Then he left. That evening, he ate dinner with his son. Balogun was 43 and had spent most of the day in meetings. He arrived home later than promised, still wearing a vivid cobalt blue suit jacket over a white shirt, tie removed, phone buzzing every few minutes. Bode watched him place the phone beside his plate. It lit up again. Sei ignored it. You are staring, he said. I am waiting for you to finish being important. Sei smiled. Daddy, your phone is behaving like your first child. You are my first child. Bode gave him a look. Sei laughed. They had this kind of relationship, love with friction, care mixed with irritation. Sei had spent years trying to make his father's life easier. Bode had spent the same years resisting being managed. Did she drive you to the pharmacy last week? Sei asked. No. Sei's fork stopped. Daddy, I went myself. You promised to use the driver for longer trips. It was not a longer trip. And if something happened? Something did. Sei looked up sharply. Bode almost smiled. He reached into his pocket and placed a small pharmacy receipt on the table. I left my wallet there. Sei stared at him. You left your wallet? Yes. And how did you get home? A young bus conductor paid my fare. Sei leaned back. You took a bus? Bode's eyes narrowed. That is the part you heard? Daddy, you are 72. I am aware. You have a driver. I am also aware. Then why? Because I wanted to. The room tightened. Sei stopped. He had learned that much. Bode continued. The young man paid my fare when I discovered my wallet was missing. I returned the money the next day. Sei nodded slowly. That was kind of him. Yes. How much did he spend? Bode's eyes sharpened. Sei saw it too late. What? You are already trying to calculate the price of the kindness. I only asked the fare. You asked because you want to replace it. I can replace it. That is not what I told you. Sei became quiet. Bode leaned back in his chair. The man has now lost his job. That changed the room. Sei lowered his fork. Because he paid your fare? No. At least I do not think so. He stopped a bus over a safety concern. There are also questions about deductions from workers. How do you know this? I asked. Who told you? A clerk told me enough to know she was afraid to tell me more. Sei frowned. What company? Bode told him. Sei knew the name, not well. A mid-sized commuter operator. He had seen their buses around. His own company dealt mostly in haulage, distribution and fleet services, not passenger operations. Different business. Same family of problems. Maintenance, scheduling, driver pressure, cash controls, accountability. You want me to investigate? Sei asked. No. Then what do you want? Bode thought about it. I want to know whether the man who paid my fare has been punished for doing something responsible. Sei rubbed his thumb against the edge of his plate. And if he has? Bode looked at him. Then perhaps somebody should make sure the people with power hear the complaint before the people without power are told to disappear. Sei leaned back. You know I cannot order another company around. I did not ask you to. You know I cannot walk into their office and fire anybody. I would be worried if you thought you could. Sei smiled despite himself. Bode's face remained serious. Use the part of power that is legitimate. And what part is that? Access. The word sat between them. Sei understood. That was the uncomfortable thing about his father. He had spent 40 years teaching young people to distinguish privilege from ability. Retirement had not cured him. 2 days later, Dare received a call from an unfamiliar number. Hello, Mr. Adebayo? Yes. My name is Bode Balogun. Dare waited. The name meant something. He had heard it on radio business news, seen it on the side of trucks. Balogun Meridian Logistics. He sat up. Yes, sir? My father is Bode Balogun. Dare's face changed. The old man from the bus? There was a brief pause. Then Sei laughed. Yes, the old man from the bus. Dare looked around his room as if somebody might explain what was happening. Sei continued. He tells me you helped him recently. He paid me back. I know. He made sure I knew. Dare smiled. That sounds like him. He also tells me you lost your job. Dare's smile disappeared. Yes. I would like to understand what happened. If you are willing. Dare was silent. Suspicion arrived before hope. Rich people sometimes liked stories about poor people. They collected them, repeated them at dinners, used them to prove something about themselves. Why? Dare asked. Sei did not answer immediately. Because my father asked me to help him understand whether what happened to you was fair. That is different from helping me. Yes, Dare appreciated the answer. They agreed to meet the next afternoon at a quiet restaurant not far from a major road. Dare nearly changed his shirt 3 times, then became angry with himself and wore the cleanest one he had. Light blue, no vest. When he arrived, Sei was already seated, cobalt jacket, white shirt, no tie. He stood when Dare approached. That surprised Dare more than the restaurant. Mr. Adebayo. Dare is fine. Sei. They shook hands. Bode was there too. The old man smiled. So you finally came when I called. You didn't call me. I sent my son. That is apparently more efficient. Bode laughed. For the first 10 minutes, they spoke about the bus fare. Sei asked no dramatic questions. Dare explained exactly what happened. Then Sei asked about the dismissal. Dare took out his notebook. He placed it on the table. Sei looked at it. What is this? My shifts. He opened it. Fares, remittance, deductions, maintenance issues. Anything that looked wrong. Sei turned pages slowly. You kept this before the incident? Yes. Why? Because once they charged me for shortage I know I did not have. Did you challenge it? I did, and I paid. Sezi looked up. Dare gave a humorless smile. Challenge is free. Consequence is not. Bode said nothing. Seyi kept reading. When he reached the page about bus 17, his expression changed. You wrote the brake complaint before you were fired? The same night. Who can confirm the driver reported it before departure? Tayo. Maybe Musa in maintenance. Who can confirm the bus was later checked? Tayo said something was changed. Maintenance record should show. Should. Dare nodded. Should. Seyi closed the notebook. Then he did something Dare expected. He reached for his phone. I can transfer something to you while this is being sorted. For rent, food no. Seyi stopped. Dare's answer had come too fast. Bode looked down, hiding a smile. Seyi placed the phone back on the table. You have been without work for weeks. I know. There is no shame in accepting help. I know. Then why no? Dare leaned back. Because if I leave here with money and nothing else changes, then the next conductor is still there. Seyi's expression shifted. Dare continued. I am not saying I don't need money. I need money. Badly. But that is not what caused this. What do you want? Dare looked at the notebook. I want somebody above Kola to hear what happened without Kola being the one who explains it first. Seyi was quiet. Dare tapped the notebook once. I want them to check the deductions. Check the maintenance complaint. Check the dismissal form. If I was wrong, let them say I was wrong after checking. Not because one man controls the story. Seyi watched him. This was the moment something changed. Not because Dare was noble, not because he refused money and became morally pure. He would go home that evening and calculate rent 3 times. He would regret refusing the cash for at least 20 minutes. But he knew what he wanted. Process. A fair hearing. Access to a room where facts mattered more than who controlled the shifts. Seyi opened the notebook again. Then we need to know which parts can be confirmed. Dare nodded. That is the question. Bode looked from one man to the other. For the first time since the bus incident, he relaxed. The fare had brought them to the table. It would not be what decided what happened next. That evening, refusing Seyi's money felt less impressive. Dare reached his room, shut the door, and found a message pushed beneath it by his landlord. Rent reminder, not eviction, not yet. Just a neat little piece of paper reminding him that principals did not reduce the amount due at the end of the month. He sat on the bed and opened his banking app. The balance made him laugh once. A short, ugly sound. He thought about Seyi reaching for his phone at the restaurant. A transfer could have landed in seconds. Rent solved. Food solved. Transport for job interviews solved. Maybe enough left to register for the next course intake. Dare leaned back and covered his face with both hands. You are an idiot, he told himself. His room offered no disagreement. For 10 minutes, he considered calling Seyi, not to beg. He could phrase it well. He could say he had reconsidered temporary support. There would be no shame in it. Seyi had been right about that. The problem was not shame. The problem was timing. Dare knew himself. If the money came before the complaint took shape, part of him would begin to wonder whether he still had the right to push. Worse, Kola would have an easy story if he ever learned about it. Disgruntled conductor meets wealthy passenger's family and suddenly develops allegations. Dare did not want the case to smell like a transaction, even to himself. His phone rang. It was his landlord, of course. Dare, good evening, sir. You saw my note? Yes, sir. When are you paying? Dare looked at the wall. Can I have 2 more weeks? You said 1 week last week. I know. Are you working? I am looking. The landlord sighed. He was not cruel. That almost made it worse. Dare, I have my own responsibilities. I know, sir. I can give you 10 days. After that, tell me clearly what you are doing. Thank you. Do not thank me. Pay me. The call ended. Dare sat still for a while. Then he took out the termination letter. He placed it beside his notebook. The temptation to turn the dispute into a personal war was strongest when he was hungry. That frightened him, because personal wars make bad records. He opened a new page and wrote 1 line at the top. What I can prove. Under it, he listed only facts. Tayo reported brake concern before departure. I informed Kola. Near miss occurred. Passengers transferred. Vehicle inspected after return. I refused to sign disciplinary form without safety context. Then he started a second list. What I suspect. Deductions not properly documented. Shifts reduced after disputes. Kola using penalties outside policy, he looked at the two lists. They were not the same. That distinction steadied him. The next morning, Dare accepted 2 days of casual loading work at a wholesale market through a friend. The pay was poor. The work was worse. By noon, his shirt had stuck to his back and his shoulders burned from moving cartons. A younger man beside him asked why he had left transport work. Dare gave the shortest answer possible. Problem with supervisor, the man laughed. Who wins problem with supervisor? Dare lifted another carton. I will tell you when I know. The casual job mattered for more than money. It reminded Dare of something he had almost forgotten while talking to Sei in a quiet restaurant. He was not fighting from a safe place. Every day the review delayed had a cost. That meant the story could not depend on him being endlessly patient, endlessly brave, endlessly pure. He needed work. He needed rent. He needed the matter to move. On the second evening, Sei called. My father says I offended you with money. Dare almost dropped the phone. What? He did not use those words. He used more words. Dare laughed. I was not offended. Good. I nearly called you last night to ask for it. Dare appreciated that he did not immediately say the offer still stood. Why didn't you? Sei asked. Because I want the complaint separated from anything you give me. That makes sense. And because I am stubborn. That also makes sense. Dare sat on a low wall outside the market. Workers were washing dust from their hands nearby. Sei, yes? If this thing takes months, I may need to take another job and leave it. You can do both. Maybe. No, listen to me. A complaint does not require you to remain unemployed as evidence of sincerity. Dare said nothing. C continued. Take work if you find it. Feed yourself. Pay your rent. You do not have to suffer correctly for people to believe you. The sentence landed harder than Sei probably intended. Dare looked at the men carrying cartons under yellow security lights. You sound like your father. Please do not insult me. Dare laughed. Then Sei added, I can help with job leads that have nothing to do with my company. You can decide whether to apply. Dare thought about it. That I can accept. Why is that different? Because a door is not cash. Your philosophy is becoming expensive for me. Good. They ended the call on better terms. The next day, Sei sent 3 public job listings and 1 contact for a transport recruiter. No promises, no instruction to hire. Dare applied to all of them. 1 recruiter called back. The conversation went well until she asked why he had been dismissed. Dare told the truth. Not every detail. Enough. There was a pause. Would your former employer give you a reference? She asked. I don't know. That may be difficult. I understand. We can keep your profile. Dare knew what that meant too. He thanked her anyway. That night, he wrote another note beneath the 2 lists. A bad employment record follows the worker longer than the manager who writes it. He underlined it once. When Bode heard about the casual market work, he did not offer money either. He did something Dare found more annoying. He arrived at the market with food. Dare stared at the takeaway pack. Papa, what? You people have disgusted me. Obviously, I said I don't want charity. Bode looked genuinely offended. This is jollof rice. That is not an answer. You paid my fare once. I am buying you lunch once. If you make it philosophical, I will take it home. Dare looked at the food, then at Bode. Chicken? 2 pieces. Dare took the pack. Thank you. See how easy dignity becomes when people stop performing it? Dare laughed with his mouth already full. Bode sat beside him for a few minutes. You know, the old man said, accepting help is not the same as surrendering control. I know. Do you? Dare chewed slowly. Sometimes. That is a more honest answer. Bode stood to leave. Dare called after him. Papa, yes? If your son sends money secretly, I will send it back. Bode smiled. I already warned him. Dare shook his head. You really have disgusted me. Bode walked away laughing. The small scene changed something in Dare. He stopped treating every offer of help as a threat to his independence. What mattered was whether the help replaced his agency or supported it. A meal did not own him. A job listing did not own him. Professional advice did not own him. The complaint still had his name on it. The facts still had to stand. And that was when the harder work began. The next problem was people. Records were difficult. People were worse. Dare called Tayo first. They met beside a roadside buka, where the plastic chairs tilted on uneven ground, and the stew was hot enough to make conversations slow down. Tayo listened while Dare explained. There may be a review, Dare said. Maybe? Yes, and you want me to say what happened? I want you to say only what you saw. Tayo stared at his plate. You know Kola still controls my shifts, yes. My wife has not gone back to work since the baby. I know. So if I talk and they cut me, will Bode Balogun feed my family? Dare looked at him. The question was not rude, it was clean. That made it harder. No, Dare said. Tayo lifted his eyes. No? I cannot promise you that. Then what exactly are you asking? Dare sat back. He had imagined this conversation differently. In his mind, Tayo would remember the near miss, become angry, and agree immediately. Real people were inconvenient that way. They carried rent into every moral decision. Dare rubbed his palm over the table. I'm asking you not to lie if they ask. Tayo studied him. That is all? That is all. You will not put my name in anything without telling me. No, Tayo nodded once. If they ask me directly, I will say I reported the break before we left. I will say we nearly hit that Danfo. I will say the pedal went too low. Dare breathed out. Thank you. Do not thank me yet. Tayo pointed his spoon at him. I am not joining your revolution. Dare laughed. I don't have enough money for revolution. That earned the first smile. The next person was Lekan. He refused before Dare finished his sentence. No, brother. I have not even asked. I know what you want. They were standing near a mechanic's yard after Lekan's shift. Lekan kept glancing at his phone because his wife was waiting for him. I cannot do it, he said. I only want to know whether your deduction. No, Dare stopped. Lekan's voice dropped. You are already fired. You can afford to be brave now. The words cut. Dare almost answered badly. Then he heard what Lekan had actually said. Not you are lucky. You have already paid the cost. I understand, Dare said. Lekan looked surprised. Dare continued. Keep your own figures. I do, good. That is all, that is all. Dare left. On the bus home, he thought about courage. People loved courage after it worked. Before it worked, it looked very much like unemployment. That night, he messaged Sei. Tayo will confirm if asked directly. Lekan will not participate. Please do not contact anybody through me without permission. Sei replied almost immediately. Understood. Then another message came. Good boundary. Dare stared at it. He had not expected a billionaire to use the word boundary. The next morning, Sei arranged a meeting with an employment and workplace compliance consultant named Ruth George. She was not presented as a miracle lawyer. She listened, asked questions, and irritated Dare by refusing to react dramatically. Do you have your contract? She asked. Yes, staff handbook. Old copy. I don't know if it is current. Bring it. Termination letter? He handed it over. Any written maintenance report? No, not mine. Any recording of Kola admitting anything? No good. Dare frowned. Good? Yes. People watch too much television and think every workplace dispute requires a secret recording. Bode, seated in the corner, chuckled. Ruth continued. Your notebook is useful because it is contemporaneous, but it is still your notebook. It supports your account. It does not prove itself. Dare nodded. That is what Sei said. Then for once a wealthy man is correct. Sei looked offended. For once, Ruth ignored him. She mapped the issue into parts. 1. Was Dare's dismissal procedurally defensible under the company's own rules? 2. Was the safety concern real and reported before the route? 3. Were the deductions Dare and others complained about properly documented? 4. Had Dare been punished for raising legitimate concerns or for unrelated conduct? If you mix everything together, Ruth said, They will call it one angry former employee throwing accusations. Dare leaned forward. So separate it. Exactly. She pointed at his notebook. Facts first, interpretation second. Dare smiled faintly. My mother said anger is not evidence. Your mother is invited to my next training. For the first time in weeks, Dare felt something steadier than hope. A plan. The first formal complaint went not to Kohler, but to the company's operations director and HR function, with copies of Dare's termination letter, selected notebook pages, and a clear request for review. Sei did not sign it. That mattered. It was Dare's complaint. Sei helped get the right contact details and ensured the letter was acknowledged. Nothing more, at least at first. The company replied 4 days later. A review would be scheduled. Dare read the email 3 times. Then he called Bode. They replied, Good, that is all you will say? What do you want me to do, dance? Dare laughed. Yes, actually, my knees have retired. The laugh helped. Because the next call did not. It came from BC. Dare. Her voice was low. Yes, did you send complaint? He sat up. How did you know? Kohler knows. Dare went cold. What is he doing? Talking too much. About me. About everybody. What does that mean? BC sighed. He is asking who has spoken to you. He asked me whether I gave you company records. Did you? No, then say no, I did. Dare heard something in her breathing. BC, what? Are you okay? She was silent. Then, do not call me again for now. The line ended. Dare stared at the phone. He wanted to call Sei immediately. He did not. Instead, he messaged Ruth. BC says Kohler is asking who spoke to me. She asked me not to call again, Ruth replied. Do not contact her. Record date, time of call, and exact substance as best you remember. No interpretation. Dare opened the notebook. His hand shook slightly, he wrote. That evening, Kohler held a staff meeting at the depot. Dare was not there, but he heard pieces later. Kohler told workers the company was reviewing false allegations from a disgruntled ex-employee. He warned staff against leaking confidential information. He did not threaten anyone directly. He did not need to. When a supervisor controls next week's shifts, a general warning can have a very specific address. Tayo called Dare after the meeting. He knows I spoke to you. How? I don't know. Did he say your name? No, then maybe he doesn't. Tayo laughed without humor. You are learning caution now. Dare rubbed his forehead. I'm trying. Tayo lowered his voice. He said anybody trying to damage the company will face consequences. Did he say what consequences? No. Write down what he said. You and your notebook. Yes, me and my notebook. Tayo went quiet. Then he said, They gave Bus 17 another brake repair last week. Dare froze. How do you know? I saw it in the workshop. Do you know what was done? No. Can you confirm the maintenance book exists? Yes. Would you say that in the review? Tayo exhaled, if they ask. Dare smiled. That phrase had become Tayo's fence. Dare respected it. The review date was set for the following week. Before then, something happened that shifted the case. BC contacted Ruth directly. Not Dare. Not Sei. Ruth called Dare afterward. She is willing to give a limited statement. Dare stood up from his chair. What did she say? I am not repeating it all to you yet. Why? Because she needs to own her statement without pressure from you. Dare sat back down. He hated how sensible Ruth was. Fine. What she can confirm is that some staff deductions she processed did not have the same supporting paperwork as normal shortages. Dare stopped breathing for a second. That is what I thought. Thought is still not proof. I know. She also says she raised questions internally before. With who? That will be in her statement. Dare pressed his fingers against his temple. Is she safe at work? Ruth paused. That is a fair question. She is worried. What can we do? We can ask the company to preserve relevant records and ensure no retaliation during the review. We cannot guarantee people will behave well. Again, no magic. No promise that a billionaire's surname could turn risk off like a switch. Dare appreciated that, even when it frightened him. Sei did too. At his office, Sei had his own problem. His instinct was action. Call the owner. Call the board member he knew. Call somebody who would make the matter move today. Bode refused to let him enjoy that instinct. "You are becoming impatient," Bode said when Seyi visited him one evening. "Workers are being pressured, yes. I know one of the investors in that company. I know. One phone call can make them protect the witnesses, or make everybody believe Dare's case exists, because your phone call exists." Seyi looked away. Bode sipped tea. "You are used to doors opening before you reach them," he said. "That is not an insult. It is not praise either." Seyi rubbed the bridge of his nose. "So what do you suggest?" "Use your access to keep the door from being locked. Do not walk through it for him." Seyi smiled tiredly. "You have been waiting years to lecture me with this situation. I did not create the situation. I know. That is why the lesson is useful." The review took place in a conference room at the transport company's head office. It was smaller than Dare expected. No cameras, no crowd, no grand boardroom with 20 executives waiting to gasp. Just a rectangular table, a wall-mounted screen, bottled water, air conditioning that made Dare wish he had brought a jacket, and 6 people with files in front of them. The operations director was a woman named Funka Koka. Beside her sat the HR manager, an internal audit representative, and the fleet maintenance manager. Ruth attended with Dare as an advisor. Kola sat at the opposite side. BC was waiting in another room to give her statement separately. Tayo had been invited later. Seyi was not seated at the table. That was deliberate. He had requested only that the company conduct a fair review and protect the process from interference. His name had helped the complaint receive attention. But Dare had insisted the actual facts stand without him looming over the room. Bode attended only for the limited part involving the fare incident and what he had personally observed at the depot. Dare sat down. His palms were damp. Kola looked calm, too calm. Funky opened the meeting. "We are here to review Mr. Adebayo's termination, the safety incident involving Bus 17, and related concerns regarding staff deductions. This is not a criminal hearing. It is an internal review of company conduct and procedure." Dare appreciated the sentence. It made the room smaller, manageable. Facts, not destiny. Funka turned to him. "Mr. Adebayo, you submitted a written account. I want you to explain in your own words what happened on the day of the bus incident. Start from before departure." Dare nodded. He opened his notebook. Kola smiled slightly. Dare saw it. The smile said, "A conductor with an exercise book." Dare began. "Before the first trip, driver Tayo told me the brake did not feel right. He said he had reported it to maintenance." Kola interrupted. "He told you. You did not hear the report yourself." Funka lifted a hand. "Kola, you will have your turn." Dare continued. "I went to Mr. Johnson. I told him Tayo reported a brake concern. He told me a mechanic said the bus could run." "Did you speak to that mechanic?" "No." "Did you have mechanical training?" "No." "What happened on the route?" Dare described the rain, the danfo, the pedal, the way passengers lurched. He did not say they almost died. That would have been dramatic. It would also have been more than he knew. He said only what happened. "The bus stopped," he said, "but later than Tayo expected." He looked worried. "I called the depot. I said we should not continue carrying passengers until somebody checked the bus." The fleet manager asked, "Who made the decision to transfer passengers?" "I did. On what authority?" Dare took a breath. "I believed continuing was unsafe." "That was not the question." Dare paused. "Ruth did not rescue him," he answered. "I did not have written authority I can point to. I made the decision because I thought the risk was bigger than the fare loss." Kola shifted. "Funke wrote something." Dare continued. "I know that may have broken procedure. My complaint is not that I was perfect. My complaint is that the disciplinary form removed the safety report completely, as if I stopped a bus for no reason." The audit representative looked up. That was the first visible change in the room. Small, but real. Kola's turn came next. He was good, better than Dare had expected. He did not shout, he did not insult anybody. He described Dare as intelligent, but difficult. He said the company had suffered from fare leakage for years. He said conductors often claimed shortages were mistakes. He said supervisors had to maintain discipline or routes would collapse into individual decision-making. He said bus 17 had not been declared unroadworthy before departure. He said Dare had a pattern of challenging instructions publicly. Some of it was true. That mattered. Dare had challenged him publicly. Dare did have a sharp mouth. Dare had refunded a passenger without permission. Truth is rarely kind enough to divide itself into one clean pile for heroes and another for villains. Then Kola made his mistake. He said, there was no prior maintenance concern documented for bus 17 that morning. The fleet manager looked toward the file in front of him. Funke noticed. What is it? She asked. The fleet manager opened a maintenance log. There is an entry. Kola turned. What entry? Driver complaint. Brake pedal travel. Logged before first departure. Silence. Dare did not move. Kola's face changed only slightly. When was it entered? The fleet manager checked. Timestamp is morning. Could have been added later. The audit representative spoke. The system logs entry creation. Kola's jaw tightened. The fleet manager continued. There is also a workshop action after the vehicle returned. Brake adjustment and replacement of a worn component. Dare felt something rise in his chest. Not triumph, relief. He had begun to fear he had remembered the whole thing too strongly because it had cost him so much. The record did not prove the bus would have crashed. It proved something more modest. There had been a real concern. It existed before Dare's decision. His story had not started after the dismissal. Tayo entered later. He looked uncomfortable from the moment he sat down. Funke asked him one question at a time. Did you report a brake concern before the route? Yes. To whom? Musa in maintenance. Did you tell Dare? Yes. During the route, did the brake behave differently from normal? Yes. Did the bus stop? Yes. Did you believe it was safe to continue carrying passengers? Tayo's eyes moved toward Kola. Dare saw it. Everybody saw it. Tayo looked back at Funke. After that near miss, no, that was all. He did not join a revolution. He told the truth when asked. It was enough. Bode's contribution was even smaller. He confirmed Dare had paid his fare from personal money. He confirmed he returned the money the next day. He confirmed he had seen Kola speaking harshly to a conductor who was disputing a deduction. Funke asked, do you know whether that deduction was valid? No. Do you know what company policy applied? No. Then why do you think the incident matters? Bode folded his hands. Because it told me something about the workplace culture, not whether the accounting was correct. Funke nodded. Precise. Teacher. He stepped out. Then Bissy came in. She wore a deep purple blouse and carried no dramatic folder, just 3 printed sheets and her own statement. Her voice was quiet at first. The audit representative asked how deductions were normally processed. Bissy explained. Documented shortage, reference, reason, approval, entry. Then they asked whether all deductions followed that pattern. No. Kola's head lifted. Bissy continued. There were informal penalties brought to me as adjustments. Some had no supporting incident note. Who instructed you to process them? Bissy looked at Kola, then back at the audit representative. Mr. Johnson, on several occasions. Kola leaned forward. That is misleading. Supervisors have discretion. The audit representative turned to him. Discretion under which policy? Kola hesitated. Operational discipline. Which policy? Silence. Bissy placed 1 printed sheet on the table. I asked that question in March. The room went still. What is that? Funke asked. An email I sent to accounts manager asking what code to use for supervisor penalties that had no shortage reference. And the response. Bissy placed down the second sheet. Accounts manager told me to stop processing undocumented deductions and request supporting records. Dare turned his face slightly. Kola's expression had changed completely now, not fear, calculation. Funke looked at him. What happened after that instruction? Bissy swallowed. He began sending some deductions as cash reconciliation instead of penalty. The audit representative leaned forward. Can you show examples? Bissy placed the 3rd sheet on the table. I can show entries that need review. I cannot tell you whether everyone is improper. Dare almost smiled. That sounded like Bissy. She would not give anybody 1 inch more truth than she could stand behind. The hearing continued for hours. There were boring parts. Important things are often boring while they are becoming important. Dates were checked. Forms compared. People disagreed over wording. The fleet manager explained that a brake complaint did not automatically mean a vehicle was unsafe, but it did require inspection and documentation. HR acknowledged that Dare's disciplinary notice had omitted the prior complaint. Kohler argued that Dare's conduct history justified termination regardless. Ruth asked for the history. There were 2 prior warnings, one for lateness, one for arguing with a supervisor in front of passengers. Dare read them. The lateness was real. He had been late 40 minutes during a flooded morning. The argument had also happened. He had called a supervisor deaf to common sense. Dare looked at Ruth. She raised one eyebrow. He whispered, "Not my best day." "No," she said. Again, nobody cleaned him into a perfect hero. That helped more than it hurt. By late afternoon, the central issue had become clear. Dare had made an unauthorized operational decision, but he had made it in response to a real safety concern that existed before departure and was confirmed after return. The termination record had not fairly represented that context, and the deductions were now their own problem. A bigger one. Funke called a short break. Dare stepped into the corridor. His legs felt weak. Sei was waiting near the far wall. He had come only after the factual sessions ended. "How bad?" Sei asked. Dare leaned against the wall. "I don't know. That sounds encouraging. You billionaires have strange definitions." Sei smiled. Then his expression changed. "There is one thing I need to tell you." Dare straightened. "What?" "The operations director asked whether my involvement influenced the decision to open the review." Dare's stomach tightened. "What did you say?" "The truth. Yes." Dare looked away. Sei continued. "I told her I used an industry contact to make sure the complaint reached senior management." Dare rubbed his face. "So Kohler can say this whole thing happened because you are rich. He can. And he would not be completely wrong." No, that answer surprised Dare. Sei leaned against the opposite wall. Mice Access opened the review. It did not create the maintenance log. It did not write BC's email. It did not make Tayo report the break. Dare looked at him. Sei continued. "And that is exactly the part I find uncomfortable." "What part?" "That the same complaint might have died if my father had never entered your bus." Dare said nothing. There it was. The real lesson hiding beneath the billionaire story. Not that wealth had saved the day. That wealth had revealed how unequal the doorway was. Sei looked toward the conference room. "If they ask me anything in there, that is what I will say." They did ask, not as a witness to the events, as the person whose involvement had accelerated the review. Sei sat at the table for less than 10 minutes. Funke asked him directly whether he had threatened the company, investors, or management. "No." "Did you request Mr. Johnson's dismissal? Did you offer Mr. Adebayo money?" Sei paused. "Yes." Dare glanced at him. Funke's pen stopped. "For what purpose?" "Personal support while he was unemployed." "Did he accept?" "No." "Why not?" Sei looked toward Dare. "Because he said cash would solve his immediate problem, but not the reason he lost his job." The audit representative wrote something. Funke asked the last question. "What outcome do you want from this review?" Sei could have said fairness. He could have said accountability. Instead, he looked at the people around the table and answered carefully. "I want the company to ask itself why a conductor needed the father of a wealthy man to get a complaint heard at this level." Nobody moved. C continued. "If Mr. Adebayo is wrong, your records should show it. If Mr. Johnson is wrong, your records should show that too. My money should not decide either one." He stood. "That is all." The review did not end with applause. It ended with more work. Internal audit requested a wider sample of staff deductions over the previous months. Maintenance records were reviewed. HR re-examined Dare's dismissal process. Kohler was temporarily removed from direct scheduling authority while the review continued. That news spread through the depot in less than an hour. For the first time, people who had refused to speak began sending messages. Not dramatic confessions, screenshots of deduction slips, photos of handwritten notes, dates, amounts, questions. Leakin called Dare. "I have my records." Dare sat up. "You want to submit?" "Yes." "What changed?" Leakin laughed softly. "Kohler cannot cut my shift tomorrow." The answer said everything. Safety does not only belong to machines. People need some too. Over the next 2 weeks, the audit found a pattern. Not every deduction was false. Some conductors had been short. Some had made mistakes. A few had almost certainly pocketed money and hoped confusion would hide it. That mattered. The company had a real problem with cash control. Kohler had not invented that. But he had used a real problem to justify an unofficial penalty system that moved outside documented procedure. In several cases, workers had been charged without proper supporting records. In others, descriptions had been changed after BC's earlier email told staff to stop processing undocumented supervisor penalties. There was also evidence that shift allocation had been used inconsistently after workers disputed deductions. Retaliation was harder to prove cleanly in every case. Patterns are not always motives. But Dare's own cut shifts, the timing, and Kohler's communications created enough concern for management to act. The maintenance review was simpler. Bus 17 had been reported. It had been allowed to run before a full check. The near miss did not prove catastrophe had been seconds away. But after return, maintenance had found a worn component and adjusted the system. The company's own fleet manager concluded the vehicle should have been inspected before continuing passenger service once the problem became more pronounced. Dare read that sentence slowly when Ruth showed it to him. So I was right. Ruth tilted her head. You were reasonable. That is a lawyer's way of refusing to say right. I am not your lawyer in court, and yes. Dare laughed. She pointed at him. Do not become unbearable now. The final meeting came 8 weeks after the day Bode first forgot his wallet. Dare returned to the same head office. This time, Kohler was not at the main table. He had already received a separate disciplinary notice. Funke delivered the outcome without theater. The company rescinded Dare's termination. His lost wages for the dismissal period would be restored under the company's internal resolution. He would receive a formal written warning for bypassing some operational steps during the passenger transfer and refund, but the company acknowledged that its procedures for urgent safety concerns had been unclear and badly applied. Dare almost laughed at that. A warning and back pay in the same paragraph. Human institutions loved complexity. Then came the larger changes. A review of unauthorized deductions would continue, with repayment where charges could not be supported under company policy. Cash reconciliation and disciplinary penalties would be separated clearly. Shift allocation would require documented reasons where disciplinary action affected scheduling. Maintenance complaints would receive a written, traceable reference. Most importantly to Dare, drivers and conductors were given a stop-and-report process for credible safety concerns. Stopping a vehicle would trigger inspection and review, not automatic punishment. Kohler was removed from supervisory duty pending the conclusion of his disciplinary process. He did not lose his home. Nobody announced that his life was destroyed. He lost what he had misused: control over people's shifts, control over undocumented penalties, control over the version of events. That was enough. After the meeting, Dare saw Kohler in the car park. For a moment, neither man spoke. Dare had imagined this meeting many times. In some versions, he gave a speech. In others, Kohler apologized. In the angriest versions, Dare said something so perfect that Kohler had no answer. Real life offered none of that. Kohler looked tired. You think you won? He said. Dare considered the sentence. No, Kohler frowned. Dare continued. I think people can ask for a breakdown now. Kohler's face tightened. You have no idea what it is like managing conductors. Everybody has a story. Everybody has an excuse. Maybe. You think rules work when everybody debates them? No, then what? Dare looked at him. Rules should survive questions. Kohler said nothing. Dare walked away. That was the closest either man came to a final speech. Going back to work was harder than Dare expected. For weeks, he had imagined the depot gate opening to him like a victory scene. He would walk in. People would clap. Somebody would feel ashamed. Maybe Kohler would be standing there, forced to watch. None of that happened. On Dare's first morning back, the generator refused to start. One bus had a flat tire. A passenger was already arguing about change before 7:30. BC saw him enter, lifted one hand and said, You are late by 3 minutes. Dare stared at her, then she smiled. He laughed so loudly that 2 drivers turned to look. You wicked woman. Welcome back. That was all. It was enough. Lekan slapped him on the shoulder. Tayo shook his hand twice. One conductor who had never spoken to him before said, "Brother, I kept all my receipts because of you." Dare almost corrected him. "Not because of me, because of what happened." But he let the sentence stand. There were mornings when a person deserved one small thing without arguing with it. The company did not return Dare to exactly the same role. For the first month, he worked regular conductor shifts while joining a small safety and operations review team 2 afternoons each week. The arrangement came from Funker, the operations director, who had noticed something during the hearing that Dare himself had never considered valuable. He understood how rules landed on the road. Managers knew what a procedure said. Dare knew what happened when a passenger was shouting, rain was falling, the driver was worried, and the supervisor wanted the bus moving now. Those were different kinds of knowledge. The company needed both. At first, some managers disliked having him in the meetings. He asked irritating questions. What does promptly mean if the mechanic is not available? If the conductor reports a safety problem and the driver disagrees, who decides? If passengers transfer, who records refunded fare? What if the supervisor who approves the complaint is the person being complained about? Funke once looked at him across a table and said, "Do you enjoy making simple procedures longer?" Dare answered, "No, Ma, I enjoy making long problems shorter." There was silence. Then the fleet manager laughed. The new stop and report process did not turn the company into paradise. Nothing did. Drivers still complained. Conductors still lost change. Passengers still insulted workers over 5 minutes of delay as if traffic had been invented personally by the man collecting fare. Some employees abused new protections too. One driver reported a vague steering concern on a Friday afternoon because he wanted to avoid a late route. Inspection found nothing. Dare was furious. "You see," one manager told him, "this is what we warned about." Dare nodded. "Yes." The manager blinked. He had expected a defense. Dare continued. "Protection without accountability becomes another problem. Document it. If someone repeatedly makes false reports, deal with that. But don't make the next real complaint dangerous because this one was rubbish." That was how Dare changed. Before, injustice made him hot. Now he had learned to make it precise. He still had the mouth. God had not performed that miracle, but he had learned where to aim it. 2 weeks after returning, Dare received his back pay. He opened the bank alert while standing beside a bus. For a long moment, he simply stared. It was not a fortune. It would not buy a car. It would not move him into a luxury apartment. It was wages he should have received in the first place. That distinction mattered to him. He sent money to his mother first. She called immediately. "What is this?" "My money. Why is it plenty? Back pay." "So they paid you?" "Yes, and work I'm back." His mother became quiet. Then she said, "Good." Dare smiled. "That is all. What do you want? Trumpet?" He laughed. Bode had said almost the same thing about dancing. Older people, Dare decided, had formed a secret association against dramatic celebration. His mother continued, "Have you paid for the course?" The smile left his face. "Mummy, have you?" "I just received the money. Then now is the best time before the money develops legs." Dare looked across the depot. The evening course brochure was still inside his drawer at home. The previous intake was gone. The next one opened in 6 weeks. "I will register." "When?" "Tomorrow." "Good." She ended the call before he could escape the promise. The next day, he paid the deposit. He took a screenshot of the confirmation and sent it to her. She replied with one word, "Finally." Dare laughed in the middle of the registration office. The disciplinary audit continued after he returned. That was another thing Dare had to accept. His reinstatement was not the end of everybody else's case. Each disputed deduction had to be reviewed separately. Some workers received money back. Some did not. Lekan recovered 2 charges that had no supporting documentation. A third deduction was upheld because his remittance genuinely had been short. He complained to Dare. "So after everything, they still kept one? Were you short?" Lekan looked offended. "That is not the point." "That is exactly the point." Lekan stared at him, then burst out laughing. You have joined management. God forbid. You sound like them. No. I sound like somebody who wants the same rule when it helps us and when it does not. Lekan shook his head. Very annoying. Thank you. Busy's situation was more complicated. For several weeks after the review, she expected retaliation from every direction. A changed roster, a bad appraisal, a whisper that she could not be trusted. Instead, internal audit pulled her temporarily into the reconciliation exercise because she understood the records better than almost anyone else. The work was exhausting, but it changed how senior management saw her. For years, she had been the woman at the accounts window. Now people were asking how the system had drifted so far from formal process without anybody noticing. Busy's answer was simple. People noticed. The audit manager frowned. What do you mean? Noticing is not the same as having somewhere safe to report. That sentence made it into the final, internal recommendations. A confidential reporting channel was introduced for staff concerns that involved direct supervisors. Dare teased Busy about it. They should name it after you. Why? BZ Complaint Center. I will block your number. You have threatened that before. One day I will have courage. They both laughed. Bode visited the depot again after Dare returned. This time he did not come to repay anything. He arrived in the afternoon carrying a small paper bag. Dare saw him near the dispatch window. Papa. Bode lifted the bag. I brought groundnuts. For me. For whoever behaves well. So not me. Correct. They sat on a bench outside the depot during Dare's break. Bode watched buses enter and leave. You look less angry, he said. Dare chewed a groundnut. I am still angry. Then you hide it better. No. I know where to put it now. Bode nodded. That is different. Dare glanced at him. Your son helped. Yes. You knew he would? Bode considered that. I knew he would want to solve it. I was not sure he would understand how. Dare smiled. He offered me money first. I know. You knew. He complained to me that you refused. Dare laughed. Bode took a groundnut. He is not a bad man because money is his first tool. If you spend 20 years building a hammer, many problems begin to look like nails. Dare turned toward him. That sounds like something you told students. It is something students forced me to learn. They sat quietly for a moment. Then Dare said, Can I ask you something? You usually do. Why do you still take buses? Bode looked toward the road. I do not always. I know, my son thinks independence is a safety hazard. Dare smiled. He worries. Yes. And you make it difficult. Yes. Dare blinked. That was easy. At 72, one should at least recognize one's own nonsense. They both laughed. Bode's face softened. When my wife was alive, she used to say Seyi loved people by organizing them. Driver, doctor appointment. Security, schedule. If he could put affection inside a spreadsheet, he would. Dare laughed harder. Bode continued. He means well, but being cared for can become uncomfortable when nobody asks how you want to live. Dare thought about the first day on the bus. People staring. Bode's hand searching empty pockets. The urge to get off rather than ask for help. So that is why you paid me back. Bode looked at him as if the answer were obvious. Yes, you did not want to owe me. No. Dare frowned. Bode corrected him. I did not want your kindness to cost you, simply because you were poorer than me. Dare stopped chewing. There it was again. A sentence that did not sound dramatic until it entered the right place. Bode stood. My break is not over, but yours is. Dare checked the time. Ah, go and work. Yes, principal. Bode smiled. Better, the relationship between Bode and Seyi changed too. Not because of one argument. Not because Seyi suddenly stopped worrying. Change came in smaller pieces. The next time Bode wanted to visit an old colleague, Seyi did not order the driver automatically, he asked. Do you want Cheek to take you? Bode looked at him. Is that a question? Yes. Then no, Seyi inhaled. Okay. Bode waited. Seyi said nothing else. Are you sick? Bode asked. Seyi laughed. I am learning. On another day, Bode did ask for the driver. Seyi tried not to look pleased. He failed. You can smile, Bode said. I am not smiling. You are showing all your teeth. That was repair too, not a speech. Practice. 3 months after Dare's reinstatement, the transport company held a staff workshop on the revised safety process. Dare had expected to sit in the back. Funke told him he was speaking. He nearly refused. Why me? Because half these people will stop listening if I speak for more than 10 minutes. That is because you use PowerPoint. I can remove you from the program. See? Abuse of authority. Funke stared at him. Dare smiled. Sorry. Ma, he spoke for 12 minutes. No motivational music, no grand philosophy. He held up a sample safety report form. If you believe something is wrong with a vehicle, write what you observed. Not bus wants to kill us. Write what happened. Steering pulling. Warning light. Brake response changed. Strange sound. Driver report. Time. Vehicle number. A conductor raised his hand. What if supervisor says move? Dare pointed at the new escalation number printed on the form. Then you use this process. If you misuse it, there is also a record. If management ignores it, there is a record. Everybody now has something to answer. Another worker asked, what if passenger is shouting because we stop? Dare laughed. Passenger will shout whether you stop or move. That one no policy can solve. The room laughed. Then Dare became serious. You are not a mechanic because you wear orange vest. Do not diagnose what you do not know. But if something changes and the driver reports concern, do not pretend you did not hear because revenue target is waiting. That line remained with people. The emergency fare idea came later. It did not come from Sei alone. In fact, Dare initially hated it. Funke raised the issue during a review meeting. We have been discussing passenger vulnerability cases. Elderly passengers, someone whose purse is stolen, stranded passengers, emergency transfers. Right now, conductors either refuse boarding, pay personally, or improvise. Dare folded his arms. So you want free rides? Funke smiled. Interesting. The charity conductor is now conservative. One old man, one fare. One old man who accidentally introduced us to an audit. Dare could not argue with that. The company wanted a small discretionary fare credit system. Not unlimited, not a marketing gimmick. A conductor or route lead could record a limited emergency fare under defined circumstances. The company would track use. Repeated abuse could be reviewed. Nobody would be expected to put personal lunch money into the fare pouch. Dare saw the point, but he worried immediately. Do not make people explain their poverty in front of the whole bus. Funke looked up. What do you suggest? Keep it simple. Name if they are comfortable. Contact if possible. Reason code. But if an old person has lost a wallet, don't turn the bus into immigration interview. The fleet manager laughed. Funke wrote it down. Sei's company later offered a small sponsorship for the pilot and staff training, but only after the transport company had designed the process. Sei refused to put his photograph on any poster. Dare heard about that from Bode. I told him if I see his face inside your bus, I will tear the poster. Dare laughed. You would not. I was a principal. I have torn more posters than you have seen. The pilot started quietly on 3 routes. For the first month, only 11 emergency fares were used. One was for a woman whose bag had been snatched. One for a teenager whose transfer money had been collected incorrectly on another route. 3 for elderly passengers. 2 were later repaid voluntarily. Most were not. That was fine. The amount was tiny compared with daily operations. What mattered was that kindness no longer depended on the poorest worker in the transaction becoming poorer. Dare liked that sentence when Funke said it in a meeting. He wrote it in his notebook. By then, the notebook had become thick. Some pages were soft at the edges from his fingers. Some carried small food stains. The first pages looked like the life of a conductor protecting himself. The later pages looked different. Course notes, safety references, shift observations, ideas for dispatch timing, questions from class. Dare's evening course was harder than he expected. He had spent years imagining that study would feel like escape. Mostly it felt like trying not to sleep over printed material after 12 hours outside. Twice a week, he left work, bought something cheap to eat, and sat in a classroom with other adults whose faces had the same tired determination. There were drivers, warehouse assistants, a woman who worked in inventory control, 2 young men trying to move into fleet administration. Nobody looked cinematic. Everybody looked exhausted. Dare loved it. One evening, the lecturer discussed incident reporting. Memory changes under stress, the man said. Write facts as close to the event as possible. Dare smiled. The student beside him whispered, "What is funny?" "Nothing. You are smiling like you know exam question." Dare shook his head. "I know an exercise book that nearly became unemployed with me." The student stared. Forget it. At the depot, Dare's role gradually shifted. He became a senior conductor and worker safety representative. The title sounded bigger than the salary increase. He joked about that often. But it came with more stable shifts, additional responsibility, and a path toward dispatch work once he completed his course. He still collected fare, still dealt with arguments, still stood in heat. The difference was not glamour, it was direction. For the first time, Dare could see where the work might lead if he kept going. Kohler's final disciplinary outcome arrived quietly too. He was removed permanently from supervisory duties after the company concluded that he had authorized undocumented penalties, failed to follow accounting instructions, and mishandled staff concerns around maintenance and discipline. He remained employed temporarily in a non-supervisory administrative capacity while final employment decisions were completed. Some workers were disappointed. They wanted him thrown out immediately. One conductor said, after all he did, they still kept him. Dare understood the anger, but he had learned to separate satisfaction from spectacle. "Let them follow their own process," he said. The conductor stared at him. "You of all people? Especially me." A month later, Kohler resigned. No crowd watched him leave. No expensive car came to take him away. No lightning struck. He carried a cardboard box from the office to a taxi. Dare saw him from across the depot. Kohler saw Dare too. For a second, he looked as though he might come over. He did not. He entered the taxi. The car drove away. Dare felt almost nothing. That surprised him. For months, Kohler had occupied so much room in his mind. Now the space simply opened. He went back to work. That was freedom of a kind. Say offered Dare a job once. It happened 5 months after the review. By then, they had become something between friends and people who had met through a very strange debt. Sei invited him to tour one of Balogun Meridian's fleet facilities after hearing Dare talk about his course. The place was enormous compared with Dare's depot. Rows of trucks, digital dispatch screens, maintenance bays, tracking systems. Dare stared openly. "This is what you people do with money," Sei smiled. "Some of it. Very stressful. You can still go back to collecting fare." I did not say I dislike it. At the end of the tour, Sei took him into an office. "There is an operations trainee position opening next quarter," he said. Dare became still. "I thought you said you would stop trying to give me things. This is a job, not a gift. Would I get the interview if I were not your father's conductor?" Sei leaned back. "That is a fair question." Dare waited. Sei did not dodge it. Probably not this soon. Dare nodded. "Then I'm not ready." Sei frowned. "You have relevant experience. I am still in the course. So when I apply, I want to know what part is mine." Sei studied him. "You make receiving help very difficult." "No, yes." Dare smiled. "Maybe." Sei shook his head. "What if I guarantee only an interview?" "Same assessment as everybody else." Dare considered it. "Not today. Maybe after the course. Maybe when his depot experience matched the role better. Ask me again when I finish." Sei nodded. "Fine." As they left the office, Sei said, "My father will say I am learning patience." Dare laughed. "He will still insult you somehow." "Definitely." Bode did. When Sei told him the story, Bode listened carefully. Then he said, "At least Dare knows not every open door must be entered immediately." Sei stared at him. "That is your response? What response did you want?" "I offered a fair interview." "And he asked for time." "Yes. Then both of you behaved like adults." "Must I buy cake?" Sei laughed until he had to sit down. The story of Dare and Bode spread within the transport company eventually. People polished it, as people do. In one version, Dare had paid an old beggar's fare. Bode hated that version. "I have never begged in my life," he complained. In another, Sei had arrived at the depot with 10 SUVs and fired the supervisor on the spot. Dare hated that one. 10 SUVs for what? Are they invading the depot? The truth was less flashy. An old man forgot his wallet. A conductor paid a fare. The old man paid him back. Later, the conductor lost his job for a dispute that had nothing magical about it. A wealthy son helped his complaint reach people who could review it. Then records, witnesses, and choices did the rest. The truth was less flashy. It was also more useful, because most people would never meet a billionaire after doing something kind. But almost everybody would eventually stand in a moment where another person's dignity cost something. Time, convenience, money, status. A difficult question. A refusal to laugh with the crowd. That part did not require wealth. One humid afternoon near the end of the year, Dare was assigned to a route because another conductor had called in sick. He did not mind. He still liked the movement of the bus. There was something honest about work, where people entered with one destination and left when they reached it. His life had become more complicated than that. The bus was half full when an elderly woman climbed aboard near a market. She wore a patterned wrapper and a bright headscarf. In one hand, she carried a small bag of vegetables. In the other, she held folded notes. Dare collected fares as the bus moved. When he reached her, she counted her money, stopped, counted again. Dare noticed before she looked up. "Conductor," she said softly. "Yes, madam, I think I am short." A younger Dare might already have reached into his own pocket. This Dare crouched slightly beside the seat so she did not have to speak upward to him. "How much do you have?" She showed him. She was short by a small amount. "I can come down," she said quickly. The words hit him with the force of memory. Another old person, another bus, another hand checking money twice. Dare looked at her face. "No need." She shook her head. "I don't want problem, no problem." He reached into his fare pouch, not his pocket. He pulled out a small emergency fare slip. Route number. Reason code amount. He filled it quickly. The young conductor trainee beside him watched. Dare handed the woman her ticket. "Madam, take your seat well." She looked confused. "But the money? It is settled." "By who?" Dare smiled. "Today, by the system." The trainee laughed. The woman did not understand the joke, but she smiled anyway. "God bless you." Amen. Dare stood. Then he noticed a man across the aisle watching him, an elderly man in a brown cap. Dare blinked. "Papa." Bode Balogun lifted both hands. What are you doing here?" "Taking a bus." Dare stared at him. "Does your son know?" Bode's eyes narrowed. "You too?" The trainee looked between them, confused. Dare started laughing. Bode tried to remain serious. Failed. When Dare reached him for fare, Bode already had the exact amount ready. He placed it in Dare's palm. Dare looked at the money, then at him. "Still no wallet problem?" Bode patted his pocket. "I checked before entering. Growth. At my age, miracles still happen." The bus moved into traffic. For a while they said nothing. Outside, Lagos continued doing what Lagos did. Horns, heat, vendors moving between vehicles. People hurrying toward places that would not care how difficult the journey had been. Dare looked down at the emergency fare slip still attached to his pad. The first time kindness had cost him lunch. He had been proud of that. Now he understood the part pride had hidden. A decent system should not require the person with the least money to personally finance every decent choice. There was value in generosity. There was also value in building things so generosity did not have to stand alone. At the next stop, Bode stood. Dare moved to help him. Bode waved him away. "I can stand." "I know. Then why are you touching my arm?" "Because the bus is moving." "That is different." "Yes, sir." Bode stepped down. Before leaving, he turned. "Dare, yes, the course? Almost finished." "Good. That is all." Bode smiled. "What do you want, trumpet?" Dare laughed so hard the trainee beside him asked what was wrong. "Nothing," Dare said. "Old people are just repeating themselves." Bode heard him. "I heard that." Dare lifted one hand as the bus pulled away. Bode remained beside the road, still shaking his head. The trainee looked at Dare. "Who is that man?" Dare glanced back once. "A passenger." "That is all." Dare smiled. "That is enough." Months later, Dare completed the course. His mother attended the small certificate ceremony in a blue dress she had owned for years. and treated like formal diplomatic clothing. She took so many pictures that Dare finally covered his face. "Mummy, please. I suffered for this certificate too." "How?" "Every time I called, you complained. That is not suffering. It is emotional labor." Dare stared at her. "Who taught you that phrase?" "Television." He laughed. Bisi came. Tayo came late because of work. Lekan brought his wife. Bode arrived with Sei, who had actually used the driver this time. Bode announced that detail before anybody asked. "I am capable of compromise." Sei shook his head. "Please do not reward him for one normal decision." After the ceremony, Sei handed Dare an envelope. Dare frowned immediately. "If this is money, it is not money." Dare opened it. Inside was a printed notice for the operations trainee role at Balogun Meridian Logistics. "Applications open next week. No handwritten promise. No special appointment letter. Just the vacancy," Sei said. "You told me to ask again when you finished." Dare read the page twice. Same assessment. No special score. Dare no secret billionaire bonus. Sei closed his eyes. Bode laughed behind them. Sei opened his eyes again. "Apply or don't apply." Dare folded the notice carefully. "I will apply." "Good. You are not going to say you are proud." "I am not your father." Bode tapped Sei's shoulder. "Say it. The boy is begging." "I am not begging." Everyone laughed. Dare looked around at them. His mother, his friends. The old man whose forgotten wallet had started an unlikely chain of events. The wealthy son who had learned that opening a door was sometimes more respectful than dragging someone through it. Nothing about the moment felt like a miracle. That was what made it good. Every person standing there had done something small and costly. Bisi had spoken when silence was safer. Tayo had told the truth without pretending fear did not exist. Lekan had learned to keep records before courage became affordable. Sei had used influence without insisting on ownership of the outcome. Bode had accepted help without surrendering dignity. And Dare had learned that standing up for people did not always mean standing alone. A week later, he submitted the application. He did not know whether he would get the job. That uncertainty no longer frightened him the way it once would have. He had work. He had training. He had a record of what he could do. And, perhaps most importantly, he knew the difference between opportunity and rescue. The next morning, before sunrise, Dare returned to the depot for an early shift. The air was cool for once. A mechanic was already checking a bus under a portable light. The driver stood beside him with a maintenance form in hand. Dare stopped. "What happened?" "Steering vibration," the driver said. "Reported." The mechanic lifted the form. "Already logged." Dare nodded. Nobody shouted. Nobody called the driver difficult. Nobody demanded the bus move first and be checked later. Another bus was assigned. Passengers would never know. That was the best part. Some victories should become boring. Dare climbed onto the replacement bus and hung the fare pouch across his shoulder. Inside it were ordinary tickets, change, a pen, and 3 emergency fare slips. He checked them without thinking. Then he smiled. Years earlier, his mother had told him life never became convenient. She had been right. The world did not suddenly become fair because one man kept a notebook. Poor workers still had fewer choices than rich ones. Old people still got spoken over. Companies still made mistakes. Good people still became afraid when doing the right thing threatened rent, food, or family. And powerful people could still confuse access with wisdom. But systems were made by choices repeated until they became normal. So was disrespect, so was dignity. Dare had seen both happen in the same depot. A passenger climbed aboard. Then another. The driver started the engine. Dare stood by the door. "Move inside, please. Make space for the people coming." A man complained about the fare. A woman asked for change before paying. Somebody at the back shouted that the bus was too hot. Dare laughed under his breath. Life had returned to its normal madness. The bus rolled out of the depot and into the waking city. Dare held the rail with one hand and the fare pouch with the other. No billionaire beside him. No audience waiting to applaud. Just work. Just people. Just another chance to decide how somebody would be treated when they had less power in the moment. That, in the end, was the part worth remembering. Not the size of Bode Balogun's company. Not the money Dare refused. Not even the supervisor who eventually lost the authority he had abused. It was the first small fare. Small enough for a bus conductor to pay. Large enough to reveal what everyone involved believed a human being was worth, when there was nothing obvious to gain. And maybe that is why stories like this stay with us. Most of us will never have the power to change a whole company with one phone call. Most of us will never be billionaires. But almost all of us will meet someone who is embarrassed, stranded, ignored, spoken down to, or one small step away from being treated as if their difficulty has erased their dignity. The choice in that moment may look tiny. Sometimes it is only a seat, a fare, a question asked properly, a record kept honestly, a refusal to humiliate somebody because they cannot fight back. Tiny choices do not always change a life overnight. Often, they do something more believable. They change what happens next.